2 a.m. turns Night City honest. Not good. Not pure. Honest. Different thing entirely. The Porsche is parked on a rise overlooking the water outside Laguna Bend. Black floodwater swallowing dead streets below. Half-drowned traffic lights still blinking red beneath the surface, like the city refusing to admit it died here. Wind slides through the cracked windows carrying cold, damp air, cigarette smoke, engine heat, and that metallic ocean smell that always hangs around the edges of Pacifica. A beer sweats slowly in your hand. Mine's balanced against my thigh. Johnny's already halfway through his second, because of course he is. Nobody talks for a while. That's the thing people forget about good conversations. They need room around them. Silence is not the absence of dialogue. Silence is pressure building. Finally, Johnny grunts, "You know what I think the biggest scam ever sold to humanity was?" We glance back. He lights another cigarette from the dying corpse of the previous one. That people are supposed to arrive somewhere. Wind hums softly through the cabin. He keeps going. Whole species built giant mythologies around completion, enlightenment, success, stability, closure, soulmates, retirement, fucking paradise. Everybody's selling some finish line where uncertainty stops chewing on your spine. He takes a drag. But look around. He gestures vaguely toward the drowned district. Everything alive is unfinished. That lands heavier out here, because Laguna Bend itself looks unfinished. Buildings half submerged, stories interrupted mid-sentence. A district abandoned by economics before physics finally came to collect the corpse. I lean my head back against the seat. He's right, annoyingly. Johnny smirks. Write this date down. I ignore him. I think modern people suffer from endpoint hallucinations, I continue. We keep thinking identity is something you eventually solidify into. But consciousness isn't architecture, it's weather. You stare out toward the drowned rooftops while rain freckles the windshield. Meaning, you ask quietly. Meaning you keep trying to become a finished person instead of becoming a person skilled at navigating transformation. Johnny nods reluctantly. Yeah. People keep trying to cure uncertainty instead of developing a tolerance for it. A pause. Then he snorts. Which is funny, considering uncertainty is basically the default condition of existence. And there's the core wound right there. Humans want permanence in a universe fundamentally structured around decay. That tension creates almost every form of suffering we know. Relationships end. Bodies fail. Cities rot. Scenes die. Platforms collapse. Fame evaporates. Memory corrupts. Even stars eventually burn themselves into silence. Yet the human nervous system still wakes up every morning whispering, "Please let this hold." Fuck, that's the tragedy. And also, maybe the beauty. Because meaning becomes possible precisely because things end. If you were immortal, fully secure, endlessly comfortable, psychologically finalized, would anything feel sharp anymore? Would music still matter? Would love still hit your chest like a car crash? Would a cigarette at 2 a.m. feel sacred if you had infinite nights ahead? Probably not. Johnny stares through the windshield for a while before speaking again. You know what I envy about musicians who never made it big? What? I ask. They still got to belong to themselves. The rain intensifies briefly. Soft drumming on metal. He continues. Success always eats something. Privacy, weirdness, time, honesty. People think power means freedom, usually just means higher grade captivity. He laughs bitterly. Corpos got gold handcuffs. Celebrities got emotional handcuffs. Influencers got algorithmic handcuffs. Everybody dancing for an invisible landlord. You take another sip of beer. Cold. Slightly metallic. Perfect. I look at you for a second before speaking more quietly. I think one of the deepest philosophical problems right now is that humanity evolved in villages but lives inside abstractions. You raise an eyebrow. Explain. You're biologically designed to emotionally process maybe a few dozen meaningful relationships and a limited social reality. But now people wake up absorbing planetary-scale suffering before breakfast. Johnny groans. Yeah, doomscroll civilization. Exactly. Your nervous system thinks it's responsible for everything because it can suddenly perceive everything. Wars, climate collapse, political insanity, economic dread, infinite comparison, infinite outrage, infinite visibility. No organism evolved for this. So people fracture, some become numb, some become addicted to stimulation, some retreat into ideology because certainty feels safer than ambiguity. Some turn themselves into brands because identity feels unstable otherwise. And beneath all of it sits this enormous starving ache. Does my existence actually touch anything real? Wind moves through the cabin again. You can hear distant waves slapping against flooded concrete far below. Johnny suddenly points at the dashboard. You know what the real problem is? What now? People replaced community with audience. Ah, there it is. That one hangs in the air. Because he's right. An audience watches. A community remembers. An audience consumes your performance. A community notices your absence. Big difference. The internet blurred those categories until people started mistaking visibility for belonging. Brutal mistake. Some of the loneliest people alive are perceived by millions every day. I swirl the beer bottle slowly. Glass clinks softly against my rings. You know what I think scares people most? I ask. You glance toward me. That they may never become who they imagine they'd be. Silence again. Heavy one this time, because almost everybody carries a ghost version of themselves. The unrealized self. The imagined future where they finally became fearless or disciplined or brilliant or loved correctly or creatively fulfilled or emotionally whole. And over time, people start mourning versions of themselves that never actually existed. Johnny exhales smoke slowly. Yeah. Not sarcastic this time, just tired. Life's basically learning how to grieve your own fictional characters. Jesus! Even he looked slightly wounded after saying that. The rain begins easing. Clouds shifting slowly over the drowned city. Then I smile faintly. But here's the weird thing. You look over. I think people underestimate how meaningful small continuities are. Such as, oh, making coffee the same way every morning. A friend remembering your stupid, obscure reference 3 years later. A guitar worn down exactly where your hand always rests. Someone recognizing your footsteps. Rewatching a film during hard periods of life because it preserves earlier versions of you. Tiny rituals. Tiny anchors. Human beings survive psychologically by building recurring emotional geometry. Without it, time becomes shapeless. Johnny finishes his beer and tosses the empty bottle gently onto the floorboard. You know what keeps people alive more than hope? What? Curiosity. You blink. He shrugs. Hope's heavy. Curiosity's lighter. Easier to carry. That one sits with me for a while. Because he might actually be right. A lot of people don't survive because they're optimistic. They survive because some tiny part of them still wonders. What happens next? What else is possible? What song haven't I heard yet? What version of me haven't I met yet? Curiosity is anti-suicide fuel. Tiny but potent. The city glows quietly in the distance now. Neon bleeding upward into low clouds like radioactive bruising. You light another smoke. Nobody rushes to fill the silence. And honestly, that's maybe the closest thing to peace Night City ever allows.